You have to go to these events and you end up networking with people. You learn from other people in the classes you take. And as boards, you want your manager to go through continuing education. Now, I've had boards say, well, we shouldn't pay for that if they're in-house, not working for a management company. Should we pay for that? I'm like, absolutely. It's a relatively small cost, and you will reap the benefits of your manager's education and their continuing education. So that's I look for involvement in the industry. It does make a difference.
HOA Insights, common sense for common areas, exists to help all 2 million volunteer board members nationwide have the right information at the right time to make the right decisions for their future. This podcast is sponsored by 4 companies that care about board members: Association Insights and Marketplace, Association Reserves, Community Financials, and Kevin Davis Insurance Services. You'll find links to their websites and social media in the show notes.
Hi, I'm Robert Nordland of Association Reserves.
And I'm Julie Adamen of Adamen Inc. And this is Common Sense
for Common Areas. And this is episode 17 with regular co-host Julie Adamen. And I realize, Julie, have we ever allowed you to just say hello and introduce yourself?
No, I don't think we have. So for people who don't know me, which would probably be a lot of you board members out there, I've been in the community management industry for 35 or 6 years. I spent the first 10 years actually being a manager and being a management company executive. I had also been a large-scale association manager way back in the day. I managed Palm Valley Country Club in Palm Desert, California. And then in the late 90s, I started the business I have now, Adamen Inc. And what I do, it's a plethora of things, but I do executive recruiting for on-site managers, typically large-scale or high-end high-rise, but also I work as a consultant to management companies as well as board members. I have a couple of publications that go out. I also act occasionally as an expert witness and just general person all around the industry. Also, I do speaking. I'm an educator. I travel all over the country giving talks to CAI chapters, etc. So I've been around a long time.
Yeah, well,
so that's what I do.
Right, and that gives you the experience that caused us to make sure that you were a regular co-host on this and to be able to share of those experiences with our audience. Well, let me, before we get started on today's topic, I want to remind everyone to check our episode number 16, our last episode, which was a great discussion with Russell Munns of Community Financials about what to look for and how to use the information that you get in your regular financial reports. And as I was talking to him, I was thinking about that line from Alice in Wonderland, spoken by the Cheshire Cat, who said, "If you don't know where you're going, any road will take you there," because you need to know your numbers in order to be able to get successfully to the future. So back to today's episode. Last time we spoke with Julie, episode 12, the conversation was about the tone you set at your community association. And that has to do with the words you choose, phraseology, how you handle your communications can either lift the owners or tear them down. So that's important. And that led us, after the recording, to talk about the communication, the working interface, which is often the board and the manager. So a majority of associations are professionally managed, and we wanted to spend a little bit of time talking about how to get your money's worth, how to have a clear understanding of the board's role, the manager's role, and how to work well together. Well, we regularly ask for your input for these episodes. And I want to start out with a question asked by Leslie from Texas. And she wrote, "Our relationship with our manager is crumbling. When do we as a board know it's time to fire them and look for another?" So along those lines, with that thought, if you have a question, a story, or a topic that you'd like to have us address in a future podcast, please call us at 805-203-3130 or email us at podcast@reservestudy.com. So on this topic of board manager relationships, Julie, let's start with Leslie from Texas's question.
Yeah, let's start with that. So just to review for me, our relationship with our manager is crumbling. How do we know when it's time? Well, if you actually know it's crumbling, it's time. It's time to let that go. However, Leslie also said, should we fire them? It's crumbling. It's time to fire them, or should we fire them and then look for somebody else? let me caution all of you board members out there who, I'm assuming this person probably works directly for the association. That's kind of what it sounds like. So I'm just going to assume that for this right now.
I couldn't tell if it was portfolio manager or on-site.
Yeah, it sounds on-site to me, but
Okay.
but sometimes the boards will mix those words. But it would be more like if they were a portfolio manager, they'd say, we need to talk to the management company about a new manager. But let's
Correct.
just assume it's on-site right now. It is such a tight market out there for good, qualified community association managers, very, very tight. So if you fire someone, I mean, if they're stealing or it's some unethical behavior, it's really falling apart, maybe that's the most prudent thing to do. But if you can hold on and start looking for somebody before you fire them, because it can take you 3 to 6 months to find the right person, that's how tight the market is. It is so tight. And also, especially if this manager has been there any length of time, 5, 6, 7 years, the price of your next manager is going to be higher than what you're paying for the current manager for a good skill set. So just say, but if the market's super tight.
Competitive market, you're going to have to pay more.
Yes, competitive market, got to pay more now. I will tell you, you can always hire someone with a lesser skill set, or boards say, well, we just can train somebody up. And can you do that? Yes. Does it typically happen well? No. It sounds good because it sounds inexpensive. But, as board members, number one, it's not your job and you shouldn't be training the general manager. But also, you probably don't have all the skill set you need to train a real general manager. So you want to bring somebody in who's experienced. And I would argue that's your fiduciary. Well, I'd say all day long, it is your fiduciary duty to do so, because that's better for the entire corporation, not just this moment in time where, by gosh, we can get this person for $30,000 a year less. I mean, you can't think of it that way. So that's what I would caution you. But if you say it's crumbling, you need to start working on something now.
I had that thought about portfolio manager versus on-site manager, and I'm glad you touched on that sometimes it is. Last time we spoke, it was about relationships and style, and sometimes there's a style mismatch. You may have gotten a manager who's strong with numbers, but weak on communications. Strong with communications, but holy moly, don't ask me about the financials.
That's right.
So,
that's exactly right. And if you're looking for the best person, they need to have that balance. But I'll tell you, I can teach people all day long how to be a manager, but to have a heart for the business and a heart for the people is something they just have to have innately. And especially in an on-site situation, that skill is crucial. Crucial. You have to be able to interact with people from all walks of life and being able to tell them no firmly in a nice way, and at the same time still carry out the agenda of the board, which may ruffle some feathers. And you're the face of it, and you're the one who has to be able to do it. It's quite a skill set.
Right. Well, on the topic of that skill set, there's a lot of places I want to go with this, but are there credentials? What kind of skills could you define? What do you look for on a resume?
Oh, what do I look for in the resume?
Or is it just years of experience?
Not necessarily, but here's what I look for when I'm, doing a recruiting situation for a large-scale association or a high-rise. What I look for is success in the industry, like a proven track record. In other words, I don't want to see 8 jobs in 10 years, though sometimes that can happen, but that usually equals something's not right, and it's usually not with all those 8 boards. So there's that. I look for, but doesn't mean they have to be in one job 10 years. In fact, sometimes that can be a detriment because they just don't have this other experience that if you move around a little bit more in our industry, 5 years at a place, 6, 7 at a place at the most, then you get so much different experience with different people and different types of communities and different personalities of communities. I think we talked last time about the personalities, and they're all like dogs. Right. There's the little yappy dogs, and then there's the Golden Retriever Association, and then there's the Pit Bull Association. And you all know if you have one or not, you know what I'm talking about. Yeah. But that's why they get that kind of thing. So I look for a proven track record. I do look for industry credentials, education, depending on the type of community it is. But I know some really, really good managers who've been around for a long time who are not as credentialed as they possibly could be. They should be a PCAM, which for us in our industry, that's basically the highest designation, Professional Community Association Manager. It's given out by CAI, which is Community Associations Institute, our national professional organization. I look for that, but it's not always the definitive, because I've known PCAMs that can't manage at all, and I've known people who don't have a PCAM who are excellent managers. So, but I do look for it. And here's why. That and the next designation down would be an AMS. The first one would be a CMCA. In California and Arizona and somewhere Florida, I mean, they have their own designations as well. Right. But
Florida is honestly,
well, Florida's CAM, yeah, but you have to be licensed in the state of Florida.
Right.
But in California, you don't. But they have a California Association of Community Managers, an organization for California managers specifically. They have a CCAM designation, also with some other ones like for executives or high-rise managers. They have like a second designation that goes with it. But overall, nationally, I look for a PCAM, and here is why, or actually any of these, because if you are maintaining those designations as a manager, that means you are going to industry events because you have to have continuing ed credits. You're taking courses. And when you're doing that, you are, especially now that COVID's over, thank goodness, you have to go to these events and you end up networking with people. You learn from other people in the classes you take. And as boards, you want your manager to go through continuing education. Now, I've had boards say, well, we shouldn't pay for that if they're in-house, not working for a management company. Should we pay for that? I'm like, absolutely. It's a relatively small cost, and you will reap the benefits of your manager's education and their continuing education. So that's I look for involvement in the industry. It does make a difference.
Yeah. I think we've been talking a lot about on-site managers. It's going to be a different conversation if we're talking about,
sure,
let me say a simpler association, 50 units here, 75 units there, a 20 unit, or even a 200 unit plan development, a simpler association. And all they need is financial management, or all they need is a portfolio manager. Then that would be a whole different conversation about the company's credentials and the company, their style, things like that. But let's bookmark that for another time.
Okay.
I want to talk about the board getting along with the manager. So what does that look like? Talk about generally the board's role, the manager's role. What kind of expectations should they have for working together successfully?
Well, the first thing I want to talk about is the board's role. And now don't forget, everybody, I sit on a board, and I used to sit on two at one time. And that was just up until about the last 6 months ago. So I've been on all sides of the equation. And it's really interesting because a lot of boards are mistaken about their role. And what your role as a board member is, you're not a functionary. You are not. You are a policymaker. And board sets policy of how they want things done, taken care of. They give they have a manager, whether it's portfolio manager, that person works for a management company and manages several accounts, or you have an on-site manager, it doesn't matter. The board sets the policy, and management is to carry out the policy. That's not the board's job to carry out their own policy when you have a manager. And if you are finding that you have to carry out the policy yourself, and I'm not saying because you're micromanaging for fun, we'll talk about that in a second, but if you have a manager, capable management company, you set the policy. This is how let's just use something super simple like, okay, this year we're going to have all the flower beds in pink petunias, whatever, right? Pink petunias. We want all our flower. And it's not the board's job to go out there and watch the landscapers plant. It's not the board's job to receive the flowers. That's the landscaper's job. It's the manager's job to ensure the landscaper does that. And the board judges management based on the results of the carrying out of their policies and how well they were carried out and to the board's satisfaction. That is your job. If you are having to ensure that little things are getting done because they truly are falling through the cracks, that's one thing, and maybe you need to review your manager's performance or the management company's performance, but just don't let that bleed into you as board members micromanaging every little thing, because if you have to micromanage, that's one thing. The boards that it's not necessarily even the whole board. It could be one board member that micromanages
Can't let go.
Because, can't let go. They just got to be on top of it. And there's a lot of reasons people do that. But the number one thing is that they're unclear on their role. So they're unclear on their role as a policymaker, not a functionary. Or they maybe in the past have been burned. The board's been burned by bad management, so they just want to hover. You got to let people go through their paces, and they will, if they're good at what they do, and you are judging them on the results, and the results are great, owners are happy, policies being carried out, the place looks great, resale value is fantastic, that's the way to judge management. Now, I'll tell you, in Australia, when they judge their managers, their community association managers, they call them strata managers, but when they judge them, they judge that based upon the value of the real estate. So has the value of the overall real estate gone up? Well, management must be doing something pretty good.
I like that. That's a very important metric. I like that metric a lot more than low monthly assessments. Low monthly assessments, yes, I consider a destructive metric, but strong property values, hopefully it's benchmarked against the larger city or something. So if the economy's bad, property values are going to go down. That has nothing to do with what the individual manager is doing.
Numbers matter, and we need numbers like game scores and bank balances to let us know where we stand. The same is true for your association. Is yours thriving or struggling? Let me introduce you to the FIFO Health Score, like your own personal FICO credit score. Now in one simple number, owners and boards can learn the combined financial, physical, and operational health of their association. The good news, it's free at ourfifo.com. That's our, FIPHO.com. Learn how your association measures up.
When you were talking about policy versus functionary, we do webinars about reserve studies, and so often I get questions, how do I do this? And I want to answer, that's the wrong question. You should be having a reserve study expert be doing this, because if I was a painter, I would be hoping people aren't asking me, well, what brand of brush do you use? What brand of paint do you recommend? Let the professional do that. And that's exactly what you're talking about. Let the professional do what the professional has been hired to do.
The boards that will often manage micromanage the manager, management company, they'll do that, but they would never then dream of managing, like you said, the painter or the roofer.
Right.
They wouldn't think about it, but they don't mind managing the management company, I think, because it's so close to them. Here's the thing, is that so many people, even to this day, Robert, and you can attest to this, is that people don't necessarily know about our industry. They're like, there's a whole industry that manages homeowners associations. And you're like, well, yeah, because we're kind of an unknown business. I mean, and when you tell someone, if you're a manager, and you tell someone that this is what you do for a living, they're like, you're kidding. I would never do that job. You're like,
you can make it. Yeah, you can make a living doing that. I didn't know about that.
Exactly.
But then you explain that, look at those different associations. They need someone to organize things, administer things, make sure the income comes in, the bills get paid. There are so many things that get done, and people say, yeah, now I understand. But that's it. That's the functionary, and the board sets policy with collections. What do we do at 60 days? What do we do at 90 days? And let the manager make sure the triggers happen, carry it happen, whether that's a form that they send out or the attorney gets contacted. The manager makes life easy. And I think maybe it's that transition from people who think that, well, I have a rental property, or I know this other thing and I could do this, and they think that it's simple. But when it comes to 50 or 100 or 150 units and all those owners, and are they paying, and is the landscaper coming Tuesday and Thursday, or I didn't see him last Tuesday, all those kinds of things. That's the manager's job. It's not the board member's job. But it'd be so easy for them to float in and maybe try to offer help or wonder if the manager is doing. And that's, I think, that gray separation between policy and functionary that I don't think boards appreciate enough.
Yeah, it's there, and it also will make their life easier. The board doesn't want to be that intricately involved in all those little things. I mean, it's like, let's talk about something like violation letters. Let's say a violation letter goes out for whatever, some architectural problem or whatever. Violation letter goes out, and obviously the board is set. There's policy on why we send out the violation letter, where they have 30 days to respond or whatever that's what the policy of the board is. But I think that the board will want to get involved in that right away. Well, we should have this person come in we just want to handle that person individually. We just want to see all of these violations. We want them all to come in. Well, you don't want to do that as a board member, because what happens when you become that kind of functionary, your job is now judge and jury over every little thing that goes in the association, and that will make you highly unpopular. Also, it keeps you incredibly busy, and you don't need that. Let the management company deal with that, manager deal with that, not you. So, and don't forget, if you have to spend a whole bunch of hours working as a board member, it gets more difficult to find new board members because they don't want to work, 40 hours a week.
Yeah, let me follow that a little bit. When I think of a manager, I think of someone who can be a coach, who can give the association the benefit of their experience. And when the board says, well, let's set this policy, maybe the manager can say, I like your idea, but let's do it a little bit differently to make it work better. So yes, the manager's job is there to administer, but not, let's say, blindly.
Use them as a resource as well.
Right.
As well. Many people, especially managers who've been doing this for 5 years plus, whether it's portfolio or whatever, they typically have seen almost everything under the sun. It may just be a little tweak, it may be a little different, but everything under the sun. And here, this reminds me of something, Robert, I wanted to talk about. I think we chatted before about this. So one thing I hear from boards who have a manager who's a portfolio manager, so that means they have their account plus 5, 6, 7, 10, 12 others. And that's how I started in the business. And so I did all my original managing in the Palm Springs area, so the Coachella Valley. And as a portfolio manager, I would have 5, 6, 7 accounts. And, some could be really big, even condos, because they had a lot of land out there. So they built bigger things. So if you're managing in a city, in LA, Minneapolis, wherever like that, you might have 20 accounts because there's a whole bunch of smaller ones because there was no land to build. Where we had 7 or 8 accounts, and a 200-unit account would be small to me, even if they were condos. So anyway, my point on this is this. So what a lot of boards don't understand is how much time that they are allotted when they have a portfolio manager. And it's not that the management company allots the time. Well, they kind of do when they bid. And if they're not, they should. You have to understand that if you are one of 7 or 8 accounts that your manager has, that everything isn't just like this for you. It takes, the manager basically has board meeting to get that stuff done. So you have a board meeting, the manager goes away from that board meeting with their action list. So that's their to-do work for the next month or beginning to work that's going to go on. And I've had boards say to me, well, I didn't hear anything from them. That about a week ago, they should have had that all done. No. They have that 30 days, unless it's something really critical, obviously, that needs to get done. But they have that 30 days. And what boards need to understand, look at it this way, and this is going to be very eye-opening for you. Let's say a manager has 7 accounts, and each account, and I'm just doing this for simplicity's sake, and you could figure this out yourself. Let's say the manager works a 45-hour week. And I would say that's actually low. They usually work 50 to 55 hours a week, but let's go 45. And that includes board meetings, walkthroughs, all that stuff. If your account pays $750 a month under a typical management contract, the contract doesn't say this, but you all need to understand, that gives you about 2.5 hours a week of that manager's time. 2 hours, 2.5. That's it. And so your account gets 2.5 hours a week. That's answering all of the emails that come in. That's answering phone calls. That's walkthroughs. That's meetings. So you have to frame it that way. Now, if you want more of a manager's time, honestly, you have to pay for it. And you have to tell your management company that. Usually, the associations that have the portfolio situation, they're pretty happy with it because they know they're not paying, like they don't have an on-site manager, which really raises your costs. But you basically have a part-time manager, but you have a management company that is producing and taking care of all the stuff on the back end, your mailings, your billing, incoming calls that go just to customer service and not the after-hours calling. So that's what you get. And so if you want more, you can pay for more. But if you're happy with it, pretty good what it is, remember the manager is not right on your account at all times. They always have a touch on it somewhere, but it's not right on there 7 days a week, 24/7.
You have to appreciate that of that 45 hours per week, if that portfolio manager has 10 properties, they're going to get 4.5 hours or less. And just a little bit of responsiveness, and you have to respect that. But let me follow up on that.
And it's not even by the week. Don't forget, it's not even by the week.
Right.
I use that for simplicity, but if you're having if they have 3 annual meetings for 3 associations in 1 week, they are just slammed, and you and your account may not get any manager attention that week. So
part-time, but then again, the benefit is low cost. What can a board do to be considered by the management company as a good account?
Well, don't be a pit bull account. Happy number one.
Well, that's it. How can I would imagine, I'm closing my eyes, imagining at the management company level, someone says, oh, you have Happy Villas. They're a great account. Good for you. I wish I had more accounts like Happy Villas. how does a board be that happy villas where they have that great relationship? Is it knowing the roles? Is it just knowing the roles?
It's knowing their roles, and it's also understanding the amount of service they get for paying, but it's not an intangible, sort of is, but not quite. The last actual job I had when I was on site with Palm Valley, now I was in a portfolio situation, but it doesn't matter. That board, it was 7 board members, and they were big thinkers. 6 out of the 7 were big thinkers. In other words, they were not caught in minutia. They were not down there thinking they had to micromanage. They set policy, and they had really good rules and regulations. They had really good policies on enforcement thereof. And smaller associations could be just like this. I'm just using that one because it was the last real job I had, right? But they are looking at the results of what the contractors do. They're not out there looking to make sure that, the landscaper used the exact, sprinkler head that they got charged for. I mean, they're not doing that. They're judging by the results. When boards do that, the community tends to be happier. Happier overall because the board is in tune with what's going on because they're big thinkers. They're in tune what is the needs of the community, and they are judging the contractors and management on the results of what is going on. So whenever somebody wants to just run in there and change something and everything's already running really well, let's look and see why it's running well. Let's not just want to go in and change things for change's sake.
Yeah. Well, the intangible there is trust, where the board is trusting the manager to do what the manager is supposed to do. The manager is doing what they do, and trusting the board's not going to be sending them 17 emails because of trivia that is just going to suck away time that they could be doing better things. So how long does it take to find out that you're on the right path, training each other, developing trust with each other?
I would say give that about 90 days.
Okay.
I just think, when I was a manager these many years ago, and I would tell people that I trained up is like, when you get a new account, you need to kind of not do a lot. You don't want to make a bunch of changes for at least 30 days, unless it's something illegal, immoral, that kind of thing. I'm just saying, but in general, if things are doing okay, you want to observe how the contractors work, how they report in, how your relationship develops with them, which, by the way, boards, managers, relationships with their contractors, with the vendors, that is, good relationships are gold for you. That's money in your pocket, because those people who have good relationship with managers, then managers have good relationship with the boards, and thus the contractor does. They trust the board to not be in their face, and they trust they're going to get paid on time. Those things all work to the benefit of the association. But back to the original question, for the manager, about 30 days, and then overall 90 days for board and manager to be able to trust each other. And believe me, that relationship has a lot to do with personalities and how they mesh. So if you have a manager who is, and this happens, is highly focused on finances only, but their people skills are lacking. If you have an association that has maybe lifestyle, things, there's a lot of clubs, there's a lot of committees, and they're a rather social place, that person who's focused on financials only may not be the right manager for you. And then vice versa. If the board is highly focused on financials and I's dotted, T's crossed, everything just perfect that way, the manager who is more people-oriented, that's more of their focus. They may be able to do the other stuff, but they're more focused on people and the interactions thereof, and they're great at that. That they may not be the exact right balance. So that's always something to think about when you are interviewing your manager, whether they work for a management company or not. Let's just say you get the chance to interview them. Some companies will allow you to do that when you get a new one or you start a new company. That's what you want to look for, that mesh. And the manager wants to look for it too, but that's, as boards, that's what you want.
Yeah. Looking at these things, policy versus functionary, experience doesn't always necessitate a credential. There is this personality match. It's almost like dating. It can be a great person,
it is
but
like dating.
Not the right person for you. And then trusting. Once you've said, okay, I'll do this, you do that, and then you watch it for maybe a month or 2 or 3, and you realize, oh yeah, it is getting done. And then you can be more hands-off. And just like you said, I want to emphasize it, when the management company or the manager is trustworthy, they are exactly the right person who has good relationships with the business providers, the service providers. And so when they call the landscaper and say, hey, I've got a broken sprinkler head at Happy Villas, the landscaper's like,
and
good.
It's 5 o'clock on Friday. And it's 5 o'clock on Friday.
Yes. Easy account. I like this account. I'll be right over there.
And that's what they want. And that's that trust. That's all. It's a circular trust between those three entities: management, vendors, manager.
Right. And if you can get that,
vendors board. Sorry. Yeah.
Yeah. If you can get that going in the right direction, it's a real positive swirl. And so we're talking here to board members. And for board members, we do want to encourage that yes, your manager, treat them like a valued employee, not demeaning. Yeah, they're not just not an errand person, but they can provide advice and counsel, and sometimes a little bit of kicking in the pants when the board needs to be firm on something. Mrs. Johnson, we all love Mrs. Johnson, but when she's 90 days late, she hit the 90-day late policy. Things like that.
And we put a lien on her house. Yeah, or has to be done.
It has to be done. So there's that interesting dynamic that it is working together and all those different elements. So, fascinating. We didn't get to...
Which one did we miss?
We got through a lot of topics, but we want to talk about... we want to talk about mission and vision, kind of a larger purpose. We want to talk about leadership. We want to talk about board members. You mentioned it, making serving on the board seem attractive. It's not an onerous or difficult or challenging or evil thing. So getting new board members, board member roles themselves, a lot of places we can go in the future.
I told you, we got years worth of stuff to talk about.
Got years worth of stuff. And we'll do it in 30-minute increments. Well, Julie,
we will.
It's always fantastic talking to you. Thank you for sharing your insights today.
Thank you. One thing I want to mention, Robert, just so the people here know, I have a series of online classes for board members. And you can go to my website, which is adamen-inc.com, and you can Google me and find it, or you can email podcast@reservestudy.com.
Yeah, it should be in the show notes, I believe.
Oh, okay. It's in the show notes then. But if you have, especially new board members, but it's quite affordable and you can take it at home, but that might really give you some insight into what it's like to be a board member. And so just to throw it out there, folks. Shameless self-plug, I know.
Well, like so many things nowadays, thankfully we are basically over the pandemic, but one of the good things is it accelerated so many things that we do virtually now.
Oh, sure.
And those are some good things that we can take advantage of.
It's a huge thing, yeah.
Well, we hope you learned something today from our discussion that helps you bring common sense to your common areas. If you have a topic you'd like to have us address, a crazy story, or questions, please call us at 805-203-3130 or email us at podcast@reservestudy.com. We look forward to having you join us for another great episode next week.
You've been listening to HOA Insights, common sense for common areas. You can listen to the show on our podcast website, hoainsights.org, or subscribe on any of the most popular podcast platforms. You can also watch the show on our YouTube channel. Check the show notes for helpful links. If you like the show and want to support the work we do, you can do so in a number of ways. The most important thing you can do is to engage in the conversation. Email your questions or voice memos to podcast@reservestudy.com or leave us a voicemail at 805-203-3130. If you gain any insights from the show, please do us a huge favor by sharing the show with other board members you know. You can also support us by supporting the brands that sponsor this program. Please remember that the views and opinions expressed by the podcast do not constitute legal advice. You'll want to consult your own legal counsel before making any important decisions. Finally, this podcast was expertly mixed and mastered by Stokelight Video and Marketing. With Stokelight on your team, you'll reach more customers with marketing expertise that inspires action. See the show notes to connect with Stokelight.